Hi everyone, my name is Melanie Lynch and I'm the founder and CEO of Herstory. And today we have a very special guest with us in Herstory HQ. This is the wonderful Maureen Simon, who I'm blessed to call a dear friend. She's been a huge influence as an advisor to Herstory, and I'm forever grateful for her brilliant expertise and very deep, insightful wisdom. Maureen is a master of change and transition. She possesses an extraordinary ability to ignite women's businesses and lives. She's the author of Awakening the Essential Feminine, Claiming Your Influential Power, and she's also the founder of the Essential Feminine Company. She's an American and an Irish citizen, and she blends more than 25 years of experience in international business consulting and community development. She's also served as a mediator in political conflict in Northern Ireland and Eastern Europe. She's an acclaimed consultant, teacher and speaker, conducting lectures, workshops and retreats all over the world, and she successfully guides women leaders to create exciting businesses and lives that reflect their deepest values. Welcome, Maureen.
Welcome, and thank you. So good to be with you.
Always a pleasure.
I have such respect for you, Herstory, and pretty much everything you touch, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Maureen, and likewise. So tell me, what's your background and how do you support women? I'd love to hear your story.
Well, my background is basically in community organization and community development, and I've been really able to do some really fun projects in that area across the globe. You mentioned a couple in the area of conflict. But then as life progressed, I realized I was drawn to business. So I went more into the business realm and worked in marketing in London for a record company, and also did a lot of work with real estate and business development. And then I just fell in love with the idea of working one-on-one with people. So I worked with women in London and launched coaching. In launching coaching, it was never heard of in London. There was no coaching. Yeah. So and so then I found out there was no coaching in Europe. And as time progressed, I realized that what I'm in the middle of is a whole sea change of consciousness around people being able to create change without lying on the sofa and being analyzed. So as that progressed, the next thing that happened was I went to the States from London and ended up realizing that women are really ready and craving, this is in the early 2000s, craving empowerment and understanding of our gifts. And so I went over to the direction of working directly with women, mostly 99%, and then into corporate, working with empowerment for women, and wrote a book, Awakening the Essential Feminine, Claiming Your Influential Power, taking 26 attributes in 9 areas of life and shining light on them, researching them and saying, if we claim these and own these, we'll really understand ourselves from the feminine perspective of ourselves better. And it's where the world is lacking. And that's in feminine attributes. So it was shining the light on the attributes. We could actually claim and own them. And that has traveled the world. So that's a little bit of the background.
Wonderful. So you've shared us your career background. How about your personal journey? Are there any particular insights or stories you'd like to share?
Gee, I guess probably the one that hits me when you ask the question right away is my dad. Okay. My dad, a very, very clear-thinking, strong-minded Irishman from Tipperary, raised me saying, you know what, you can do anything you want. He raised me in New York. And then I've been back and forth to Ireland since year dot. But what he put in me in terms of new thinking was that you just do what you need to do, get out there. So from my point of view, I was excited to just be brought up that way, you know, and women have not necessarily had the confidence that I was raised with. So that stood out for me. So one of my life stories is that my father was one of the greatest influences in my life. And the idea that he was a great influence to me has made me realize that we really need men to understand the power that women hold. Well, there's a lot of other stories. There's living in California, a beautiful place, progressive thinking, lots of new ideas, innovation. That's Northern California near San Francisco. And also just loving the idea of the world and getting to meet so many people from London, now Dublin, Wicklow, as we know, and different places that have inspired me, because the land coming from a family that's very Irish, the land has inspired me to understand a lot about myself. And I have to say, I'm very, very pleased with having been brought up with Irish parents, because I notice in Ireland, we don't go too far from the land. A lot of what we are experiencing is informed by the land. We might divine something from nature or begin to understand something, but it's very, very usually close to the land that many people live. And of course that there's cities, and then there's these beautiful parks. So coming into Ireland has given me a sense for how important the environment of nature and the land is. And living in London, having amazing parks, being able to work with women worldwide, having this influence of parenting that I've had. I mean, I could go on, but that's kind of a cook's tour of my influencers in my life.
Stunning, stunning. And I've actually witnessed in the last 3 years how you've deepened your connection to the land at a whole new level. It's been beautiful to witness, really very empowering to really to step up into a new power within yourself. And even
the area
too.
And the land allows it. It just gives you the space to do, doesn't it? Because I
Yeah.
see you do it too. And we're both big on hikes, and we're both big on the sea and fires. And I think that's what we need to all be spending more time with now.
Yeah, certainly calling for it. All right. And I love to hear the story about your dad and his influence. It's always so heartwarming to hear about the feminist fathers. And of course, they exist throughout the era. But when we talk about feminism and women's empowerment, it's easy to overlook the role of men and the positive roles of men.
Totally.
In championing their daughters and their wives and their sisters. And we did a Herstory event for Father's Day last year based on that exact insight. It's just so heartwarming, you know? Yeah.
And also, I think when I started working with women's empowerment, it was probably, I'd say, there was still the fire in the belly of we need to be more empowered as women, and still a little bit of the bra burning. But I'm seeing now, it is now definitely time for us to come to the table with everyone. And I do believe still women need to know their attributes and power sources, as they are, in my eyes, keepers of the feminine. And we all have masculine and feminine, as you know, Mel. We both have. Yeah. Of course. So the idea that we, I believe, are predisposed, controversial subject today, but we are predisposed to the feminine based on, for sure, socialization, and also for sure, the brain biology. Things that I read are Brizaldine, this Helen Fisher, some fantastic brain biology work. So I go through that school, but we're keepers of the deep feminine. But the men have as much male brain influence is also very prominent with feminine. So it's time to come to the table together and really have some fun, finding our commonalities and allowing the feminine to be more prominent in the world.
Yeah, beautiful. And for allowing and creating a safe space for men to connect to their inner feminine too.
Absolutely, that's the point.
Their emotions and to be held through that process. So that's the journey we're on. That's the dance. I call it the dance to equality now. No longer the war of the sexes, it's the dance to equality.
Lovely.
It'd be a much more harmonious process going forward. Like that, the first two waves of feminism, definitely the anger was a great catalyst and we had to feel the rage, but now we can definitely shift beyond that. I call it compassionate feminism, but it's a bit of a dance, you know. There's still moments where I get quite angry. But
yeah, and I love the way you're wording things. That's really nice. It opens it up.
Yeah, it's important. It's really important to move beyond the anger too. So great catalyst for change. Wonderful.
Agree.
Yeah. So tell me, I know, look, we're living in really fascinating, turbulent, transformative times. When you speak to your clients and collaborators, what are you identifying as the greatest needs that women have today?
Because we've been through a year of COVID, my biggest concern is the isolation that they speak of. And what I mean by that is that because so much of the home is still managed and cared for by women, and this is cross cultures. Yeah. I thought it might be predominantly in Ireland at a higher percentage, but the more I'm doing reading, the more I'm seeing that it's affecting women worldwide in very similar ways. So my biggest concern is that we are not able to be seen and able to be connected with in terms of our need for collaboration, relationship building, and a lot of that is in person, although it's not always in person because we've been online for years. But the point is that if we need to be in person in group, that has now been eliminated at this time. So people have been, I think, basically set back a bit from their ability to be at the water cooler, to have a good time with each other, to connect and to play. So I think that for the purposes of both mental health and progressing in our careers and in our lives, has taken a toll on women in a very deep way. Because we are so relational and we build our relationships, and our relationships hold for us the capability of potential. And so I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing the challenges for women being, I mean, I feel this very strongly, and I've been talking to many women about this, but because we were moving and are still moving on a path of progression in terms of being able to work into power and into places of predominance. Now, there's good to say about this also, but the concern is that women have been not so much progressing in areas where they would be leading. Okay. This has put a big setback, and I'm referring to the last year, because we're seeing major change and major growth. Okay. I mean, we're doing mentoring programs in large banks where we're seeing 2,500 people, women, available to apply for mentoring and to get forward within the corporate world. It's changing now that the attention is not on that. So my concern, and some leaders that would be around the world are talking about, is how do we still move women and move with women towards roles where their voices are heard. That's probably the biggest one, I would say. I feel that we also have a need for more building of networks, and women say that over and over again, that we want to be able to speak more clearly about who we are in networks of women for support. So I think that there's a couple things. What do you have anything you want to say, because you're right out there as well?
I think I hear you on the connection. I think if you think about, especially when women, we process through difficult times, we boil the kettle, we have a cup of tea, and we sit around the tables together. And now with the rules, we have to get a cup of tea, take away tea, and then go for a walk, which is actually how men process better that way. It's non-confrontational. If you're ever worried about a man, they say bring him for a walk, and you're more likely to make a breakthrough that way. And that's why there's this new counselling psychology services in Dublin. I read a great article in Indo about how there's a number of counsellors bringing their clients for walks in the Phoenix Park, and it's been very effective, especially for men. Okay. But as women, I think that there's something about that, the heart of the home, and being able to come together in those private spaces to really go together, that you can't really do as much in a public space. Maybe if you're up in the wilds, I think hiking in the mountains, but I mean, how realistic is that to be doing it on a weekly basis as well, with the busyness of our life? Because the reality is we're nearly it's just as busy as before, but we don't have the outlets that we need. And I would be concerned about the isolation and just the saturation of Zoom as well. And this new shift to working from home. I know that the government have got a new directive now to get more people working from home, which is fine, and there's pros and cons, but we really have to think about our lifestyles and how we find that healthy work-life balance. It's a dance. I mean, I've been doing it now since 2014. I've been working remotely and I love it, but you have to get that balance right, you know.
We're human. Humans interact, and humans gain a lot of peace and harmony, innovation, creativity, and support through interaction. Of course, yeah. And Zoom is great, and we're grateful for it. We use it all the time in our business here, and I know you do, but it's different. And I think we need to still stay human. Completely.
You just can't beat physical heart-centered contact when you all get together and. Yeah, the magic happens really. It doesn't really happen so much on Zoom. You know, it's there's something special about.
I agree, and I think it's obviously a huge issue across the planet. Yeah. And I want to see women progress in life in all ways, you know, so that they're able to just be able to come out and be fully themselves. And I think the right use of will is fantastic. I think our ability to create and innovate together collectively is fantastic. Yeah. Some of the attributes in the book is collaboration. I mean, we're natural collaborators. So we want to be able to create different environments that allow for that. So to answer that question in a nutshell, it would be more that there's been a lot of areas that we now need to open up again and be together around in order to move through innovation and creativity and some very powerful aspects of relationship that women are natural at.
Fascinating. So I'd love to hear more about the Essential Feminine book, which you wrote a few years ago. It's all about women's attributes and strengths. Genius idea to do it, because I've had so many conversations, you know, running Herstory, where people say, well, we just need to get women into politics and that'll be the solution. We just need them in leadership roles. But the reality is, on the process, the path to that leadership role, they will take on a lot of masculine traits and often reject their innate femininity, to the long-term detriment, I think, of women's empowerment. Because if we can bring those really authentic feminine traits to the table, it's stunning when you see it, witness it happen. But it's rare. It is rare to see it at leadership level. So tell me more about the attributes.
Well, I wrote the book, Awakening the Essential Feminine, because I felt that there was no place to go to really look at well-researched feminine attributes that are in both men and women. But again, women are predisposed, I believe, it's again controversial, to lead in the world. And I looked around and I thought, when the research was done, there's charts of it. I have a book of it here. It took a year to put this together, just the research for the attributes, so they could make it into the table of contents as a feminine attribute. And when I looked at them, I thought, that's exactly what's not happening in the world. And Mel, I swear I had no idea that it was actually going to be that much of a reversal of a gap. So when the research charts were really complete, I looked at them and I said, this is not a surprise that our world looks as it does. So if you go into it, emotional expressivity, our ability to relate, the whole idea of networking, peacemaking, peace that is very powerful, that includes people in a collaborative way. Verbal agility. I mean, the research goes on and on. There's 26 of these attributes in 9 distinct areas of life. So communication, just the whole way the brain is wired, the whole idea that the left and right hemispheres of the brain have 14% more connectivity because of cortexual tissue that's more advanced. Helen Fisher did research as an anthropologist on this and said, back in the day when we were in Africa, there were children running here, children running there. The brain began to become much more connected because of the responsibilities of keeping all kinds of activities within the vision. So the actual connectivity of the brain goes way back in Homo sapiens development. So from that point of view, I think we have a lot of capabilities that need to be brought into the world right now. And the reason that I wrote the book was to just say, this is a place where we can go to look at them. You know, we can go and read about these attributes. We could take a look at them. There's all kinds of things you can say you agree or don't agree with. It doesn't even really matter. To me, the point is that there are feminine attributes that exist. These are the way I researched them. I felt really good about them. I don't mind who carries these attributes. If it doesn't have to be a man or a woman. It's just that the gap is in those areas. The feminine has been silenced. And those attributes, because they may not be as assertive or as forward, tend to be less aggressive and tend to be less prioritized. So that's where the light was being shown when I wrote the book. So I feel that the attributes that women hold, if we can begin to identify them, the book's a good place to start. I don't know any other places that I've seen and researched and listed, but anywhere that you can see that, look at them, and then begin to claim them. Begin to assess what ones are your high points and which ones are your lower areas, which ones you want to develop more, which ones you are not drawn to, and then claim those, and then bring those into your work and into your life, And like you say, you've done a lot of work at tables where they've been aggressive, and it doesn't mean a woman can't be aggressive. That's not the point. But
No.
the attribute of being able to be assertive and very clear and communicate what you want is the kind of communication that we need. And those tend to draw more towards feminine attributes in both a man and woman. They need to be at the table more. So claim those. And that's what the purpose of the book was.
Yeah, and stunning, and it's just really prescient, really, that's and visionary to name those attributes and to go on that beautiful research journey that you went on, because we need this more now than ever, really.
I agree.
Yeah. And just even the idea that there are inner masculine and feminine attributes, that as a man you can express feminine traits too. That's quite radical for most of the public. You know, and isn't it sad to think that, you know, of course we know this, we're very much on a spiritual path, but in the Eastern traditions, in India, it's the Idam Pingala. In the Chinese tradition, it's the yin yang. And then in the ASEAN early Christian tradition, it would have been Father Sky and Mother Earth. That was a lesson in how to reach non-duality. And then, of course, the feminine was axe, and then you have a bird with one wing that can't fly. But I will never forget the day in Trinity College, actually, when the Trinity students, they host a Herstory salon every year. And at the last 2 years ago, they invited a psychologist to speak. And she talked about the inner masculine and feminine. And the students were like, whoa, this is so liberating. So I'm a dude, but I have feminine attributes. And girls are like, and I've got masculine.
I love it.
It has to be in this like gendered, you know, Hollywood box. Oh my God. And I just thought that was so fascinating that the students were so open to it, but they hadn't been aware of it. So this is something that we'd love to teach in schools as well as part of our education program.
Yeah, absolutely. And even now, Mel, there's research out where we shouldn't have any differences, that the brains are the same. It's common. I mean, and some of it is very informative and interesting research. But, you know, it doesn't really matter to me it's not about, I love the light bulbs, but my main thing was never to be controversial, just to say, these are feminine attributes. You own them and you're a guy, brilliant. How do we get those at the bloody table where decisions are being made? So for me, it's so exciting to be able to say that these are feminine attributes. And did you notice they're not there at this table where these decisions are being made? So for me, it's very exciting to get that piece across. And so you have to be, in today's world, I've noticed to label anything, it's duality again, but to label anything one thing and the other is immediately going to get controversy. So the way I'm really seeing it is that, like you just said, if you are a man and you are a woman, you have these available to you. Where do you see the gaps in your world? Let's turn the volume up on it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And like what you're saying there is spot on. Like there's a lot of talk about moving into non-binary society, which of course is fundamentally, it's the path to enlightenment when you reach a state of non-duality. But the reality is that first we have to heal through the shadow elements of the masculine and feminine, to reclaim the lost, suppressed elements. And that's where your attributes are so key, so essential.
I'm so glad you said that.
They need to be reclaimed, but they're always there, and they're probably always very much active in the subconscious and within the collective unconscious as well. But really, really important work. And there's some examples. I'm just thinking, one of my favorites would be Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
What's possible when a world leader balances her masculine and feminine to perfection, really.
And values Indigenous people and things that would be more collaborative and collective and inclusive, which are feminine attributes. So and you know, the other thing I was going to say a minute ago is you said, well, what do you think women need most now? I was thinking, you know, the things that I said, and I do believe they are all very important, but we also have to shed the light on now. We have probably more women presidents and prime ministers in the world. Did you see that list? Someone sent a list around recently that was making, it was a video about all of the different women that are in high roles right now. So there's something happening. It's almost in the undercurrent. She would be part of that. And I think we are beginning to see that the influence will now hold. It'll take hold. She's a good example.
Yeah. And didn't we see that as well with the early days of the pandemic? It was quite literally black and white. The stats ran and life is very rarely black and white, but the stats ran on the performance of male politicians versus female politicians in their treatment of the pandemic and the success rate of handling it. And the female politicians won out globally. No, I don't know. Yeah, and it was actually our educational psychologist. She shared the stats with me. I thought, wow, that shows you. And I think that was one of the gifts, certainly in the early days of the pandemic. It taught us, well, we had to reclaim the compassion, the caring element of our society. It was not so much a focus anymore on, you know, driving profit margins and go, all that yang masculine energy. And we had to rebalance and recenter ourselves. And I thought the early days of the pandemic, there just seemed to be so much potential for positive change. And now, unfortunately, I'm very much confused at where we're at, but it's nice to speak to those early days. I know we were all watching and observing it, and how in Ireland, nearly like our government, like for the first time, had to be socialist almost in their perspective, that they had to become so much more compassionate and caring in their approach, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. I think the bottom line is we need to learn from what's working and do more of it.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest real dream right now is that we begin to see where the feminine is not enlivened across the planet, and do a gap analysis and see if she were here. I mean, some of this stuff's measurable, you know. If she were here, if these attributes that we're discussing, and there's like 26 that I've identified. So if these attributes were really enlivened, what would be different? You know, let's take a look, because I think we need to bring, like you say, the compassion, the care, the desire for peace, the desire for power with as opposed to power over. I mean, there's so many of them, I could go on and on. But you know, this whole idea of harmony and peacemaking, that would be a feminine attribute in the way that I researched and see it. So it's time for us to, across the globe, to break out of the things that are hard and harsh, separating, become more inclusive and collaborative, and start bringing these attributes to the table. But we are in time, I hope, but we are.
Beautiful, Maureen. And I know you've done work in Northern Ireland during the peace process. You've shared some of your stories with me, and we're both very passionate about peace building and promoting the role of women in that process, because when they get the chance, the opportunity, they're absolutely instrumental, and it's fundamental to the long-term success of any peace process. I couldn't believe it when I sat down with the Irish ambassador to the United Nations, Geraldine Nason-Byrne, in New York, and she said to me that the case study of the role of women in Northern Ireland in the peace process, it's a key case study at the UN. But would you believe their stories are not taught on the curriculum in Northern Ireland or the Republic?
Didn't know that, no.
I know.
But I was there and witnessed their involvement from the Quakers bringing people together, and just women sitting over tables and talking about their sons who were in the jail, and this was on the jail grounds, to just women in communities that we've met while we've been in Belfast, that will still speak, circles that I even joined for Herstory once on the Falls Road, and in the stead of Herstory, to be a representative there. It was absolutely amazing to see these women get together some 20 plus odd years later and say, do you remember when we did this? And it was just something of care. Do you remember when we did that? And we took care of a soldier. They were literally going through their stories. And it for me is something that I remember and saw. So we're talking women, but it's the feminine aspect of that woman that took the time to take care of a soldier that was not a soldier she was meant to be taken care of. Or someone that could say, we've had it. We love our sons. We want peace. And it's not for power. We just want peace, not to have power over someone, but to be side by side with you. And so these are the attributes that play out in real life that we need to see ignited.
Oh, no, I completely agree. And so there's just so many great anecdotes about the role of the women in the North. One of my favorite is Eileen Weir. I believe you met her. She's one of the key founders of the Shankill Women's Centre. And Eileen told me that she's a community activist on the ground in inner city Belfast, at the thumping heart of the peace process in Belfast. And she pioneered a program rehabilitating women from prisons that was so successful that not one single woman reconvicted. And you say that to any psychologist now,
Know that.
that's
Wow.
near on impossible.
Yeah,
but she talked me through her process and how she did it. And it was a really feminine approach to it. She had to bring in the feminine, because the masculine, it doesn't, you know, those detention centers and the old prison system, the restorative system is so much more, it's so much more effective. And it's innately Irish, the Brehon system. I think it's very much part of our ancient and not so ancient history, because we've only had the common law for what, 200 years. But yeah, it was really incredible to hear her story in particular. And then you see the evidence of it, the fact that the women didn't reconvict. And only recently in the last few years, she told me that the British prison services have come over from London and they're actually adapting her program now. But she developed it, like, you know, on the, you know, in the inner city of Belfast, she developed this program. I have so much respect for her.
And these women need to be seen. And I know you're shedding light, because I've been up there with some of the main Herstory event, which was in the Belfast City Hall, and watched that building get lit up with these women's faces. And I want to say kudos to you, woman, because if you're the one I believe are the one that's shedding light on this, this is something that has to be seen. Huge part of Irish history.
And we have to rewrite the school books too. And a lot of people aren't aware that these stories are not taught on the curriculum. So we've documented 19 stories so far.
Brilliant.
And the long-term objective is to rewrite the whole curriculum, of course, all the subjects, so that men and women are equal, and of course the gender spectrum too. But that's a process, and I'd love to see your attributes taught in schools. I mean, tell us like some insights on like what teachers, because I know a lot of teachers follow Herstory. What teachers and students could glean from your work?
Well, I think the bottom line of these attributes are to be able to help girls initially gain confidence and gain strength and clarity about themselves through knowing that they hold very powerful attributes. So wherever in any education system that it is appropriate to help girls gain confidence, voice, and clarity around who they are, where feminine attributes can shine a light or provide insight, that's where they would be best used. So they're not in a school curriculum right now, so I can't give you the background of how that works. But I would say that if I were designing something for a school, I would want girls to know that there's a history, that there is strength, there are sisters before them, and I would want to sort of connect some of these attributes. Watching your RTV show that you had designed around key women in Ireland, that was a series of I think 8 women or something like 8, that you actually can take those attributes and actually back out of those women and say, which of these attributes did they actually hold in the greatest level of strength that got them where they are? Is that natural to you? Not really. What would it take for that to be natural to you? Are you drawn to that one? Is there another attribute here? I actually have an assessment on a website that we will be relaunching, theessentialfeminine.com. It's in a holding pattern now. It's live. You can see it. But the assessment's on the right-hand side of that site. And it's kind of like, if we hold this attribute, the behavior that we exhibit in the world would show strength in this area. Beautiful. It's kind of like gap analysis or reverse engineering. So I mean, that's the kind of design I would be interested to see schools do, because I think it's a matter of really know thyself in the Socrates way and saying, I would love to be like her, the pilot that was flying the plane with beautiful clothes. Oh God, she was amazing. What was her? Yeah. So she had, oh my God, chutzpah. She had spark. She had spunk. She had taste. She had bravery. So where in these attributes can we shine a light and pull some of that from ourselves? So as a teaching tool, I would just want to see the attributes introduced to girls and women in a way that they could access them.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, we must do that together. That's definitely a collaboration.
Yeah, they're so powerful.
Yeah, it really would. And I'm just even trying to imagine the influence these attributes would have had on me if I had this awareness in school. Because it took me years to unlearn a lot of my conditioning from the advertising industry and that very young, masculine, go, keep working till you burn out. Way, you know, it's the Western way of working.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, the capitalist structure that I very much fueled and played into, and loved it and thrived on it. But you know, my life was very much out of balance, and I found a much more yin yang, harmonious way of working now, for the most part. You know, there's moments obviously when you have to put the throttle on, but it's amazing how like all areas of your life thrive when you do nurture those feminine attributes too, and how your work improves and your productivity improves. You know, it is fascinating. But the
Yeah, we've
ideas
gotten
of it,
driven in many ways. We've become driven. And in becoming driven, that's definitely more of a masculine attribute, that hunter, gather, go get. And women have it also. There's no question. But
oh yeah.
where can we all just find that middle ground to come up with that equilibrium that you're describing? That's to me the question for the universe.
Yeah, and in a way, I mean, that's one of the gifts of the pandemic. Certainly in the beginning, we had to slow down, and we couldn't go quite as fast. We had to find new ways of doing things. And it was really fascinating to see how different people were in different organizations and nations were approaching the same problem, and how we had to be so innovative but more feminine. It forced us to be more feminine in every way. It was really interesting.
It was a reset of sorts. Yeah.
It was, yeah. But now it's like back to balance again. Huh?
Yeah.
Where's
Back
that?
to balance. We always need to come to equilibrium, something in the center, you know,
Yeah.
on every area of life. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So what do you think, what are I suppose the attributes that you think women need most today in the world? Are there particular attributes you'd like to spotlight now?
The biggest areas that I'm seeing women, I would say, need to develop or build is confidence in our communication.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with, again, know thyself and clarity. So when we know who we are, then we learn how to speak what we need and contribute from that place. That's when most women and girls will actually create the shift we need on the planet. So if you said to me, name one thing that you think we all need to really work on across the planet, and I would say this is even sexless, but for girls and women particularly, I'm underlining it, is that they need, and we need, to be able to speak our truth confidently and clearly, know that we make a difference, know that the self-love that we have for ourselves is a contribution to the globe as opposed to something selfless, and learn how to speak from that place of knowing and loving ourselves clearly, so that we have a voice that is valued. And you start lining that up, and you will see a planetary shift.
Wow, powerful. Yeah.
It's critical, actually. I work with women on it all the time, because it comes your way when you're working individually or in groups. I was a little timid to say that, and I wasn't quite sure how, and just getting them really clear on how to say what is true and authentic from one's being, that needs to be said for the benefit of all, in a way that can be heard. And that's the art of communication that we do need to see across the globe.
Beautiful. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I suppose I take it for granted that I trained in comms, but I've seen that with a lot of women struggling to ask for what they need and to articulate themselves in an empowering way.
Yeah, you'd be a very great influence for women to look at. Yeah, because you're quite comfortable with that. So that wouldn't be one I would have pointed out for you, but I would say if you're going on average, that would be one of the biggest.
Yeah, it can be a really big thing, isn't it? It's sad, really, because we've got so much to give, and
I think it's learnable though, Mel. We can learn it.
We can.
All
of these attributes can be nurtured within. Everybody can have them. They're universal.
And claimed.
That's the great gift of them.
Yeah, and claimed.
So I think what's my next question for you? I'd love to talk a little bit about women and collaboration and how we come together and how we can enliven and uplift each other. But traditionally, certainly, women we can almost play into the patriarchal model of divide and conquer and see each other as competition. And that, I think that old paradigm of there's only space for woman at the top, that's still there a little bit. I've witnessed that in some of the organizations that I've been dealing with. But I was so blessed, Maureen, that you started. It's wonderful. Sisterhood of Women in Wicklow, and the month that I moved, you invited me to join, and you have this a real special gift for bringing women together. Really wonderful, empowering, uplifting, talented women from all walks of life and all different ages. How you hold space and how you nurture those bonds. It's really stunning to watch. I've learned so much from you in that process.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, what do you think about women in collaboration going forward? I mean, how can we overcome those old paradigms of competition and division?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It might be the very best one. See, when you come back to your heart and you start to look at really who you are, most people are kind and do care and want to see the betterment of all. When we go into a fear place in ourselves, man or woman, we create a distance from our heart and we start to make a connection more with the fear that rules us, which is what we're seeing today a lot around the world with this issue we're dealing with or without it. So what I think we need to do is realize that each person is quite amazing. And that if we are able to show who we are in a vulnerable enough way to a certain number of people, like you're mentioning in this particular group, we've got this, 13, 14 women, that you actually, and there's many circles throughout that I've been involved with my lifetime and has started or joined. And we start to put ourselves out there as who we really are. And we realize that everything's not going to go 100% smooth when we do, but there's vulnerabilities we'll share. We begin to start to move more towards what's real and authentic. And my biggest thing with women is when they do that, I think that's what you've seen in some of the circles, is that you're just there to support and help each other and listen and have fun and dance and be whatever the purpose of that circle is. So my idea is that there's a little formula that goes into it. You start out by being authentically who you are. You realize that there's a risk. You move past the risk and into a place where you serve within that circle. You create something meaningful. Fun is at the center. It's like a recipe, isn't it? Fun is at the center. And then there's some kind of a desired outcome for everyone. So in these circles, women, if you look at the attributes, you go back to the awakening the essential feminine and you look at the attributes, you've got collaboration, networking, building, peace and harmony making. You go through these attributes and you'll start to see that that's what's in these circles when women come together. How do you do it? You do it by having a shared intention. So you might do it because you want to have a social. We live in an area and it's isolated, so we want social, and we want connectivity and support. So you have some theme, and then you invite women that you feel are aligned. And the new word today, a lot of the work I'm doing with women is around energy, understanding what's aligned and misaligned, understanding what really we have as our greatest capabilities and how to bring those forward. You bring that all into the circle, and you start to build just basically support groups. We did it with weaving. We did it with patch quilt making. We did it with poetry. I mean, we'll do fire stories here around a fire and get 7 women, and sometimes men will join in, and the stories will be fantastic. So we just find a real beautiful way to connect over something that we all want. We bring our best attributes. We don't go down the first time something is said to us that hurts us. We stand tall. And we allow for other people to come forward. We show our vulnerability and we give. And that's how these circles create lifetime and meaningful relationships.
Beautiful. Wow. Great insight there. A lot of expertise and experience over the years in building women's circles. And it's a real gift as well in how you hold space and how you choose the right women and the alignment and the intentions, and it's beautiful to witness and to experience it in person. And I've never sensed any competition from any of the women in our circle. And we rise together and we have serious crack in the process. Fun is really important.
It's so important. And Mel, don't you think we need to be encouraging women to be in circle more?
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I'm all over that topic. If you ever want to play with that one and build it out more. I think we need worldwide circles where women are comfortable and never alone and have something very special that they can turn to any day of the week. And that's a real vision of mine.
Wow, that's a big one. Wow. And what
Doable.
about the role of men in these circles too? Because I know recently we opened up the circle for an event with the men. It was really, really beautiful experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think what you're saying is that you're so used to kind of, we do circles in our area of Ireland quite often, and Mel's very involved. So we often call a circle just to have like a dance in a living room, or a fire, or a poetry reading, or a dinner party, or I'm waiting to get the sessions, going where we have enough musicians, because I love to play the Baron, but whatever the purpose of the circle. But we actually did a holiday gathering, which was a form of a circle. Funny you should say it that way. And there were some beautiful men that came. And I think there's two things that happen there for me. One is, one of the things that I notice, and I've done this in workshops, is women, when we're together and we're in circle, we are just entire. I mean, maybe I'd love a good row on this, or a controversy, or a conversation. We're so open, and we're so, we're different. That's how I've always seen it. But maybe I want to see it that way. I don't know. I don't think so. But it's just, we are different. We relate differently. But when we have the gatherings with men, it's so different and wonderful and dynamic and fun, and they have a different energy. And it's not just men, but when men do come into these circles, I do see that difference. But I still think we need the women's circles to be women's circles sometimes. They're different.
Nice to bring the men together too. And then for them to witness how we do what we do, and for them to experience the feminine attributes in their full glory.
But do you feel the energy differently sometimes when it's mixed?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've witnessed that now since December, since the solstice. 3 circles have opened up to include men on an occasion. They're still women's circles, but they'll invite the men to join. So there's definitely a shift there. I'd love to see more men start circles too in Ireland, because certainly they really need the support to come together and nurture and nourish each other.
Totally agree, Mel.
And from them talking to the men that I know, there's a big gap there. So we're lucky, we're spoiled as women. I think I personally feel like it's easier to be a woman in this lifetime.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm just, it's a very interesting point. I haven't really thought about it that way, but I do feel we have challenges that are really interesting, that make it interesting to be a woman, because we have to kind of focus on being seen, being heard, being clear, being blah, blah, to fit into a very patriarchal society or cultures. And yet at the same time, we have the sensitivity that's needed for today. So there's a double-edged coin there.
Completely, yeah. Pros and cons. That's the nature of life. It's not black and white for the most part.
No, it's not. It's not.
Wow. It's been fascinating chatting to you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Just, on the front of just show up now. That's what I want to share. Show up. This is probably, if you look at the Hopi prayer, we are the ones that we have been waiting for. It's one of my favorite prayers. If you put the Hopi prayer up, it gets into an elder speaking about we've waited so long to wait for our leaders, but we are the leaders that we've been waiting for, to not be in any way, shape, or form timid about sharing the gifts that you've got, and also to be able to know your gifts and know yourself. I think that's really where we're all at. And it's time for us to show and shine what our natural gifts are. And they will be utilized.
Beautiful, yeah. That's very powerful parting wisdom. Thank you.
And there's something I'm doing, Mel, also that is going to be coming up in the near future. And if you want to share the link, it's around that. It's around bringing our most natural gifts into the world and using some of the magic, some of the energetic power we have, because there's a mystical side to my work that's very strong. And it's living well in today's world. How do we do that? How do we live well in today's world and activate our life force? And this is, I think, something that men and women both need. But it's back to that Hopi prayer of we are the ones we've been waiting for, and why wait longer? But how do we learn how to live in a world that's changing? How do we learn to live well now, activate our life force, and be present for others? And that's an area that I am taking, as you talked about the male and men and women circle. It's going to be open, and it's going to be something that we can all dive into in a masterclass. And it's not just for one now, the world, we need to all be showing up. So this is something I'm sharing that I just wanted to mention to you.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to sharing more details and to seeing all the wonderful work that you'll be producing over the coming years. It's going to be very enlightening, I'm sure.
It's good fun too. Not to mention yourself, you're also absolutely someone I respect super highly. She gets back up on that horse and goes back out and stays with her mission that story of women needs to be told, and there needs to be an equitable world. And she and I are joined at the hip on that. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. And you too. You too. Absolute pleasure, Maureen. Thank you so much for your time and all your wisdom and all that you do, and for being a forerunner and a visionary on this journey and empowering all my generation and the younger generations to come.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much.
Very grateful.